Welcome to Decoding Devy. This is episode 14. It's brought to you by the IDP Guys. And make sure, if you're on YouTube, to subscribe to the channel. We have tons of content coming out, shorts, and plenty of videos about rookies coming out. And I want to welcome Daniel Miner at fanatics_Daniel on Twitter for joining me tonight. How are you doing, Daniel?
I'm doing great, man. I'm excited to be a part of this. I appreciate the invite.
Yeah, no problem. So just first of all, just give a shout out to everything you're doing right now and just tell the people where to find you.
Yeah, so I'm part of the Devy to Dynasty content creation crew. So I'm a regular on the Huddle show, which, usually takes place on Tuesday nights. Not every Tuesday, but, whenever we can fit it in to all of our busy schedules. So that's been a whole lot of fun. I'm just been working on rankings, Devy rankings on the dashboard. The Devy dashboard is the place to be for all things Devy and C2C. So I highly recommend that to anybody listening that is not a part of that. Shout out to Brandon Lejeune for starting that whole thing and inviting me aboard. So yeah, other than that, we do have this Devy Summit coming up on May 22nd. And I wanted to, give a little plug for that, so it's going to be a 6-hour event with Brandon Lejeune, Felix Sharp, and Matt Hicks are going to be hosting that. So it's basically co-hosted with Devy to Dynasty, Campus to Canton, and Rookie Big Board. So yeah, it's going to be a good time. Mock drafts, just talking Devy, talking C2C, introducing people that aren't familiar to those concepts. And it's going to be a charity event, so all of the charities all the money raised is going to go to the refugees out in Ukraine. So, good cause, good times, and going to be excited. Going to be an exciting time. So yeah, I'm just soaking it up, man. I'm loving being a part, of this thing and this Devy community, this C2C community, getting a little bit more into that, and you just learning more about scouting players and gaining that knowledge and insight from others in the industry and all those things. So it's good times.
Definitely. And I'm glad you brought up the summit because I did see that. I don't know, maybe whenever Brandon posted something about it, and It does sound amazing. I think the perception that some people in the industry have the perception that Devy will never, get popular, but I think it already is. And people want to know about it and want to get into it. And I just tell people that just jump into a league. You'll obviously make mistakes, but it's the same thing when you start, in Dynasty, because most people start redraft and they go to Dynasty and then Devy, and now we've gotten to the C2C part. So I think it's definitely and what Brandon was talking about in his last podcast, where even if you just get in one C2C league or a Devy league, it's going to help all your other Dynasty leagues when it comes to rookies, and you're just going to be a step above everyone, because a lot of people start just looking at the rookies now, so they only have a couple months to kind of look at that, whereas if you have Devy, you're looking at that all year for a couple years. So yeah, that summit's going to be awesome. I can't wait for that. So
absolutely. Yeah, I agree with all of that. It's just so much fun, really diving in and getting to know more about some of these players, and I grew up playing Madden, and I always played franchise mode, and same with NCAA. When I would play that, it was always franchise mode. And I really enjoyed the, building a team and then the scouting part of it. So in Madden franchise, it's always looking forward to the draft and sort of scouting these prospects, and same thing with the NCAA, always looking at recruits and that kind of thing. So it's just, we get to all live our dreams as general managers. In Dynasty, you can do that, but this takes it to a new level. So I love that about it.
Definitely. I definitely agree. And it's a lot of fun. Like I said, I started C2C last year. I really dove in, joined a few leagues, and it's funny. I've been playing Dynasty for about 6 years, fantasy football for about 12 or 14. I did in those C2C leagues, I did better on the college side than the NFL side, which you would think would be the opposite because I played, fantasy football NFL wise. But, thanks to Campus Canton and the Devy dashboard, I found some players. I went all in on, the Nevada players, Fresno State players, got a lot of their wide receivers, and obviously Carson Strong, and did very well there. So it's tons of fun. I would recommend anyone just learning a little bit more. I know Felix has been doing some spaces on Twitter about C2C. So if you ever see those, go ahead and join them. They're been talking about that. So next, every time I have a guest on, I kind of talk about their favorite team. So you told me you're a Stanford fan, and I know you're a Denver Broncos fan. So just tell me a little bit about how you became fans of them.
Sure. Yeah. So I grew up an NFL fan. That was my main thing. My dad was big into NFL. He was always a John Elway guy. So Broncos naturally became his favorite team, even though we've never lived in Denver, and he's never lived in Denver to my knowledge. So that's just, I gravitated towards my dad's team on that side. My dad, he passed away when I was 13, and I kind of, fell off a little bit and lost my love for football for a time. Around 18, I started getting back into it. And of course, I naturally gravitated to the Broncos. It was always my team. So that fandom has never gone away. Now, as far as college football goes, I was, like I said, always more of an NFL guy. I kind of watched college football here and there, and I followed it because I always liked to watch the draft and sort of always have been interested in prospects coming out. But I never really had a team. So I started diving in, a few years ago and getting more familiar, watching more games. I knew I had to select a team, right? Got to have a team. So I'm not an alumni anywhere. So that was out, right? So now I'm thinking, okay, well, locally, right? I'm in Northern California. So what's somewhat local? And then Stanford crossed my mind. And then it also clicked that John Elway played at Stanford. So it sort of became an easy selection for me. So I've been a Stanford fan, for the last few years when I really started to get into it, and it hasn't been all that fun, I gotta say. But I'm a loyal fan.
No, that totally. Stanford's the kind of team where they are not necessarily fun to watch because of the way that they play, defense and run the ball. So if they're not winning, it's not necessarily a great watch. It's not like they're exciting, score a ton of points. So I decided we can talk about the Broncos a little bit instead of Stanford, because they don't necessarily have I don't know if there is a Devy player that we would really necessarily talk about, because they've had a couple running backs transfer out. So talking about the Broncos. So first, let me ask you, when they picked Surtain last year, were you happy with that pick, or did you want them to go quarterback?
I was very unhappy with that pick, and not because I don't like Surtain as a player. I think he's an excellent cornerback and really had an excellent rookie season. But I wanted Justin Fields, man, and I fell in love with Justin Fields all through the process, right? Thinking he's probably not going to fall to us. Somebody's going to take him in the first 8 picks, and then we're on the clock, and he's available, and I'm thinking this is easy. This is going to be the easiest pick in franchise history, and sure enough, they go cornerback. So I was pretty bummed out about that. That one stung a little bit. In fact, it still stings a little bit. So,
I'm not a Broncos fan, but I do have quite a bit, of those Broncos receivers, Fant on tight end. So I was really hoping they got Fields too, because I thought that was perfect. I think they're a quarterback away, and especially now that they have Javonte Williams, they have all those wide receivers. That was I understand the corner decision, but my thinking was, at least in that division, with how Herbert came out his rookie year, and obviously with the Chiefs and Mahomes, you're most likely not going to be able to stop teams and play the brand of football, at least they were trying to do. You're going to have to be able to keep up, and I think they kind of saw that. So let's go into that. Do you would you want them to take a quarterback in the first round? Do you think they'll take one in the second round? What are your thoughts about what you want the Broncos to do and what you actually think they will do?
So as far as them taking a quarterback in the first round, I'm not as high on this quarterback class as I was last year. So it all depends really on their evaluation. I think if they fall in love with a guy that they really like, whether it be Pickett, Corral, Willis perhaps, then I'm on board with it, because I do also believe that they're a quarterback away and they need somebody to unleash those weapons, and they're all good prospects. I wouldn't call them elite prospects, but I think they're those three in particular, and I'll throw Sam Howell in there as well. They're good prospects. So I would be okay with them, maybe going a different position, taking a linebacker, an edge rusher, perhaps. Maybe they go corner again and pair somebody with Surtain. And then in the second round, I think there might be some value there in the second round. A guy that I like that's really grown on me, that I know, a lot of people in the Devy community have been kind of down on, is Desmond Ridder. So he's a guy that I could see them potentially going with in the second round if he's available. Somebody that, has the size. He's got the speed. He ran a 4.52, and you could see it on film that he's a pretty mobile guy, almost a poor man's Justin Fields if we were going to make that comparison. Kind of that, he has that elongated throwing motion, but kind of a slow processor. But overall, I like him as a prospect. So somebody like him, even Carson Strong in the second round, I would be okay with.
Yeah, definitely. And I know I've been, in the Devy dashboard, very strong on not against. I don't have anything wrong, Desmond Ridder. As a person, I want to make that clear. But as a prospect, I wasn't. But I did a deep dive into Jerome Ford. We were kind of talking about that on Twitter, and I saw a lot of more good things from Ridder. There's definitely some consistency issues. Mm-hmm. It's weird. He can make the throws, but then there's sometimes it just like he's totally off. But that seems maybe like a footwork thing, which when we talk about Pickett, I think Pickett has, can have some, all these quarterbacks seem to have a little bit of problems with mechanics and footwork a little bit. We'll talk about that later. But I could see that. The only thing is if they take Ridder in the second, I wouldn't think they would want to throw him. I don't know if any of these quarterbacks you want to throw in. So then they'll have to figure out, who they're going to kind of bridge. And the only thing that sucks for the Broncos is usually when you bridge between teams, you're kind of like in limbo. And like I said, I think their team's ready to compete. It's just they have to get that consistent quarterback play. So maybe with a new head coach, with Daniel Hackett, he said he really liked the quarterback class. Who knows if he really does or if that's just – that's why I always say during draft time, I never know when scouts or GMs or coaches are lying to our faces or really truly speaking.
Lots of mind games.
Yeah. So that's what I always like to say, when people talk about that. But another thing you kind of put on the sheet was because I asked if you thought they would trade some receivers, and you said probably KJ Hamler the most. And I would love that because when he came out of Penn State, I really loved KJ Hamler. He was kind of a little before his time in that, that speedy slot receiver that's kind of becoming bigger in the NFL, the last couple of years. But they just haven't had the quarterbacks to take advantage. And then, he got hurt last year. So I think it would be best for him and maybe for the Broncos to get him some time somewhere else. So, I definitely agree with that. And I don't, I don't root against the Broncos. So I wish them well. And especially for all of our, fantasy teams, because I feel like a lot of people have been in. I've always liked Jerry Jeudy. I'm not ready to give up on him. Where some people are. I think he could still be very good. And who knows with Sutton if they get a quarterback that can threaten the field more than Teddy. Because Teddy's a fun quarterback, but he's not going to really be very aggressive with those throws down the field.
Right. And Teddy's a free agent. So the only quarterback, to my knowledge, that they have under contract currently is Drew Lock, and God, I really don't want to see Drew Lock on the field again. But if it was in a bridge scenario, I might like it. I might be okay with it rather. I really liked Nathaniel Hackett. You brought him up. I like his energy that he brings, even in that initial press conference, he came in with a lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm, kind of a polar opposite of Vic Fangio, who I was not a fan of. I just didn't like his demeanor. I'm not a huge fan of just that old school, like tough guy kind of coach, feel like the players coaches or, these younger guys that can really relate are typically more successful in today's NFL. But as far as Jeudy and Sutton go, I see a scenario where one of them could be traded, and that's if they do go acquire Aaron Rodgers. I could potentially see them moving one of those guys in that move. Although I'm not sure Aaron Rodgers, I'm sure he wants to come in with a stable of all those weapons if he's coming in. But however that deal is going to look, I mean, it's going to be expensive. I'm not entirely sure how I feel about it, to be honest. I kind of would rather us get a young guy and build around him, young team. But yeah, it's a new era. It's a far cry from the Peyton Manning era of the Denver Broncos, but it's never too late to turn that corner.
Definitely. And it's kind of a weird kind of conundrum, because obviously if you get Aaron Rodgers, you're trying to go all in and win a championship. But if you go all in and don't win a championship, you kind of screwed yourself for the near future, like you're saying. Whereas if you got someone younger, I guess the main thing is how, your thinking would be, can you beat the Chiefs in Mahomes, with Aaron Rodgers? I guess that would be the biggest thing. And are you willing to mortgage your a couple years future for that? So that would be interesting how that happens. And seems like more people in the media are saying that they think Aaron Rodgers is just going to stay, and he's just throwing a little temper tantrum, which it seems like he's been doing that more and more, trying to get, more attention, or maybe just get those receivers that he wants. So
yeah, speaking of mind games, Aaron Rodgers loves them. So
yeah, he definitely does. Like anytime he posts something on his Instagram, everyone was like going crazy because, I think we talked about it in the chat when he put that one little thing on his Instagram. Everyone was like, he's going to retire, and still haven't heard anything. So yeah, he definitely loves the attention. So now let's move on to more of the Devy part. And one question I've asked a couple of people when they come on is how, when we're getting ready for the draft, how do you rank players? Because different people do it different ways. You can order them how you think they'll get drafted, who will have the best career, who's the most talented as of now, or some other classification. I think I currently do who I think is the most talented coming into the draft. That's how I grade them. And I guess a little bit of how I think they can project in the NFL. So when you rank players for the draft, how is your classification really?
So I'm a big believer in taking a balanced approach, and really in all areas of life. I kind of live my life that way, making daily decisions just from a balanced perspective, because I understand that, typically nothing is black and white. There's gray areas everywhere. So I kind of take that same approach when evaluating prospects. I'm definitely more of a film guy. So I like to see certain things on film. I'm looking at the traits, right? The production matters, absolutely. But again, if there's factors of why they didn't produce at a certain time in their career, if they're in a timeshare, whatever it may be, right? I factor those things in. So certainly, with that being said, I would say that projection to the NFL level becomes a primary focus, because you definitely want guys that are going to get draft capital, right? And land in potentially a spot where they can produce early. So that would probably be the main thing that I'm looking for. But again, it's just a really kind of balanced look is what I try to look at.
Okay, yeah, definitely. That makes sense. So now let's go ahead. Let's make sure I'm adding the right thing. There we go. So we're going to talk about Kenny Pickett and go over some of his film. I was kind of talking to you beforehand. For anyone that doesn't know, you might be one of the biggest Kenny Pickett fans I've met through Twitter and everything. You've been big on him, and
that's what they tell me.
Yeah, I've been kind of the opposite. I won't deny that fact, but I did watch about 7 or 8 of his games this past weekend and put together the film, and I liked a lot what I saw. He's definitely moved up my ranks quite a bit. Just on the screen you'll see was not highly recruited. It's pretty much he picked Pitt over Temple and BC. He was the 33rd pro style QB in 2017. You see 2018. He started 4 years, 2018. He was below 60%, but Mark Whipple was the offensive coordinator since 2019. It did take him a couple years to get that huge season, but you see that the completion percentage did get higher once, he became the offensive coordinator. I'll go ahead and, this is one of the things that I've said. I'm not going to say that he is a one-year wonder, but that would be one of my concerns just because he's played those years. I did hear, I think in 2020, someone brought up in the combine that he had a foot issue, some sort of injury. So that might explain some of that and the shortened season. But he did fine in yards in 2019. Just that huge jump in touchdowns. It's one of the craziest jumps I think I've ever seen. But actually, I made a slide too because I wanted to look a little deeper. Did he, rack up all these touchdowns, all these yards against, bad defenses and everything? And I found out he did not. So he played against, 3 top 25 defenses. Biggest thing that surprised me that was Western Michigan was in the top 25 of total defense, run defense, and pass defense. But he had a huge game against them, had a very good game against Clemson, and a very good game against Syracuse. Clemson, he wasn't at 70%, but it's still good. That Clemson defense is still good, even though they struggled this year. You see that Western Michigan 6 touchdowns and 1 interception, and somehow they still lost that game because Pittsburgh's defense allowed LOB and the Broncos to really go off on there. So, but he had a very good year. And before we start, with the film or anything, is there anything you wanted to bring up about Pickett?
Yeah, I'll just kind of elaborate a little bit on some of the things you were talking about. So for one, the production issues early in his career, I understand that as a valid concern. And I know that's one that a lot of people use, as a deterrent as why they're not super high on him. Now, again, it's like I was just talking about, nothing's black and white. There's gray areas and everything, and some people, it just clicks at some point in their college career, right? Like the light bulb goes off and all these things that they're learning, in the hardest position to play in sports, which quarterback is, all these things you're learning on the fly, all of a sudden these things all click. He was in that system for a while. So I don't think it's that big of a surprise. And I don't think it's a fluke that he was able to put that kind of season together. And I just remember having conversations with some of the guys in the dashboard and, just chatting about it. Early in the season, he was putting up all those numbers and, people were like, well, who has he played? He hasn't played anybody yet. And then you just showed the stats from these games. And so it was after that, it's like, well, he's played some good defenses, I know Clemson in particular, they had a good defense. Their offense was awful this year, but on defense, they were getting after it. So yeah, I just a really impressive season he had all around.
No, definitely. I think through the year, he started off hot, and I was waiting for that time where the dip where he was going to have that game, and I actually looked through his games. I mean, if you had to say one of his worst games was probably maybe Virginia, but he had 4 touchdowns and 2 picks. We're going to show some of the footage, where he made some bad decisions in that game. But I mean, if your worst game is 4 touchdowns and 2 picks, I mean, you could do a lot worse. And I think since he played such a great season all the way through, like I said, I still have the concern about the 1 year, but with this class too, I mean, technically you could somewhat say that about Corral too. I mean, he threw the touchdowns last year, but he had all those interceptions in 2 games and no one really believed in him, and Howell had last year. And then this year he's kind of, come down a little bit. So, and I still don't think Willis has put a full year together. I know that, a lot of people are in on him, but so I kind of put the film together in 3 sections. One is his passes in the pocket. One is his passes outside the pocket, which he is way more mobile than you would think he would be. And and then lastly are just some of the throws where it looks like he made some bad decisions, just to kind of go through that. So sure. I was about to start talking and I realized I did not put the film on. So I need there we go. All right, let me do this. And I think I could do still getting used to all this technology.
Oh, I hear you on that. Never ending study on technology.
Oh, yes. All right, there we go. So this first play, I really like this. He's going to throw to this receiver at the I need to take this off too. I got to take the banner off too. Like I said, always learning.
Oh, yeah.
There we go. Now we can see the full screen. Okay, so this receiver up on the top, it's going to be a comeback route, and he throws it exactly on time, allows him to, catch it on time and everything. Quarterback wise, I'm very big on timing and second placement of the ball where they can catch it and run with it right away in stride. I know last year a lot of people didn't like Kyle Trask because of his arm strength, but what I did like about him was he always placed the ball in stride with his receivers. I think that can make up for some of those other things. So I'll just play this clip right here. So just right on him, and he's able to make the play on the defender. So here's a close-up view of it. Right, he turns around, the ball's there. So he can make a play on the defender. So
exactly, yeah, it's about putting the ball where he can, like you said, turn around and make a play. Where he's not just going to get tackled as he's catching the ball. So the anticipation on this throw in particular, but a lot of the throws for Kenny Pickett are really nice.
Yes. So don't have the list in front of me, so we're just gonna go blind from here. So this one, this one is just across the middle, right in there for the receiver, right in the middle. I mean, it's a fairly easy read, but I mean, you still have to put the ball right there. Good timing, catches it. Jordan Addison, makes plays after it. I will say, but I think this is a little part of all offenses now. There were a lot of throws, just short throws to let them, do the running after the catch, but offenses nowadays are mostly doing that, so you can't really take that away from quarterbacks anymore. Carson Strong does it, Matt Corral, how all these quarterbacks do.
Yeah, and you see it in a lot of NFL offenses nowadays as well. So it's just the way the game is going.
Yeah, so this one, I believe this is an outside. Oh, no, this is the deep throw. This is one thing that him and Corral, I've seen this. They can either throw a complete dimes deep, or sometimes they overthrow or underthrow. And I think that can be fixed. But I thought he throws it with great loft, but there are sometimes I saw where he threw it too much loft, and the wide receiver either had to come back for it or the defender was able to catch up with it. But this one, I mean, it's just perfect. Right there, he doesn't, we'll run that back real quick. I mean, and again to Addison, who's a great receiver,
Right. And he really wasn't, he's throwing off his back foot right there too. So that's, there's some knocks on his arm strength, and I don't think that he has an elite arm by any means, but kind of shows that he can get the ball down the field when he needs to.
Yeah, that's one thing. We watching the combine today, I heard Daniel Jeremiah talk about, he doesn't have the strongest arm, but he can make all the throws. And that's really all you want, because people are going at the combine are going crazy about Willis's arm, which he does have a strong arm. But honestly, how many times are you trying to throw the ball 70 yards down the field? I mean,
Jamarcus Russell had a strong arm.
Yes.
I mean, 70 yards on his knees, you know what I mean? And what did that translate to?
Yeah, definitely.
Such an overrated skill, to be honest.
Yeah. Here's another great loft. I think this one, one happened like 2 straight plays in the game against Georgia Tech. So he makes that great throw in between 2 defenders, and then he's going to make this throw right here, right on the money. There's a defender right there, right on his hip. He throws it where he can make the catch, extend, not have to worry about the defender. Just great placement.
Oh yeah, that is perfect placement right there, certainly. And his mechanics look really good on that throw. I recently subscribed to what's his name, JT O'Sullivan, his Patreon, and he does full quarterback breakdowns, the QB school, full games, and I've been learning a lot watching that, man. It's pretty cool, and he talks a lot about footwork, and that. Is it a 3-step drop? Are they keeping their shoulders square on the throw, setting their feet? So I definitely like to watch that in quarterbacks. And Pickett does a lot of that well. I think he's at his best when his mechanics are solid. He sometimes gets a little sloppy, which we'll talk about here in a minute, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to look into that, because I think that's the weakest I am, scouting his quarterbacks. I've told you that some of the things I look for, but like the footwork and kind of the mechanics, I kind of see some of it, but I'm not as in tune, so that's definitely something I'll look into.
Yeah, it's kind of fun, once you start looking at it a little bit more deep that way, because quarterback is just a fascinating position. You know what I mean? Like I said, it's the hardest position to play in sports. And there's so many things about being a good quarterback or a great quarterback that we don't even get to see on the field, right? Because the intangibles, the leadership abilities, how do they get along with their teammates, all those things. It all goes into it, but certainly footwork and throwing mechanics are things I find myself looking for.
So this is just a close-up of it. As you can see, he had it right there. So let's roll this one right here. Another deep pass right on the money. That's what I'm talking about in stride. He just had to put his, arms out and catch it. So that's another great thing that I like to see with Pickett. I think this is the cross field throw. Yeah. Across the field, right to the receiver.
I mean, again, the arm strength on that, throwing across the hashes like that and getting it there on time. I mean, that's plenty. That is plenty of zip on that ball.
Yeah, definitely. This is one of the reasons why I put this in, just to see he can throw it across the field. And, I know Georgia Tech's not, the greatest, but still, I mean, he puts it across the field, plenty of zip, puts it right there where only the receiver can get it. Here's against Clemson, another right in there. See, that's another strong throw right in between two defenders. That's really good defense, but he fit it in right there. So that's another throw that that's another thing you look for, because I feel like some quarterbacks are better, in the middle of the field, and then some are better on the outside. But it looks like he can make all the throws. It's just probably maybe getting a little quicker on processing things and just working on some of those mechanics.
Yeah, absolutely. That's an NFL throw right there.
Definitely. So here's another one where this is where they start with the mobility, which he made a lot of nice throws on the move. This one, he's coming across. He's going to throw the ball back in the middle to the tight end. Nice play, gets a first down here. So here's another play where he moves around and then throws a perfect pass across the middle in between a couple of defenders. I think there's a replay of this. No, there's not. So let's roll that back.
Yeah, let's see that again. You alluded to it earlier about his mobility. I think a lot of people are, they don't realize how mobile he is. I've been kind of touting that for a while, in my when I talk about Pickett on Twitter and whatnot. He's a mobile guy, but I love that he's always looking downfield when he's on the move. Because you see, even on this play, he could take off and run, but he's looking to make a play.
Definitely. And I want to preface this. I'm not comparing him to Aaron Rodgers, but I think, early on in Aaron Rodgers, because Pickett has, I did see in the tape, I didn't put any in, where he would run for first downs and kind of Rodgers did, but Rodgers is always trying to move around the pocket to make the throws, to make all these throws. And this is a lot what he does. He's rolling out and still looking down the field, whereas other quarterbacks don't always do that. I need to go back and look, but I feel like and part of it's probably because North Carolina's offensive line was horrible this year, but it seemed like Howell was always running for his life. So
he was running for his life.
So I don't really want to blame him for that, but Pickett definitely, because he had the most rushing yards this year, but it was only 250. But he's definitely mobile enough to move around. So let's roll this again, and you see, just right in there, the defender that was right in there. The only person that could get that is the wide receiver. So I like that, because I think you have to be aggressive, especially in the red zone, to throw the ball. But there's a middle point of being aggressive and not just being reckless, where I think Matt Corral can be reckless.
Sure. Yep. Absolutely. And I think there's moments where Kenny Pickett has some of that too. He's kind of got that gunslinger mentality, gets him in trouble a little bit, but he makes some really amazing off-platform plays. Definitely.
There's another one where he rolls out. I mean, this throw is crazy. I mean,
that's elite right there.
Yeah. I remember when this happened, I was watching this game, and it was insane, because this is, like we said, Clemson has all these athletes. Their defense is very good. It's their offense that let them down. So, he rolls out, off of really 1 foot, perfect throw to Addison, pass in the defender made a good play. This is actually, I believe this is going to be an incomplete pass, but on 4th down. But he rolls out, throws a perfect pass, but the receiver does not catch it. Yeah, so on the move, sees the receiver. It's perfect. He doesn't catch it, but that's a perfect pass.
Right, across his body too.
Yeah. So
those are hard throws to make right there.
Right there, like perfect.
Yeah.
Not many quarterbacks can make those kind of throws, moving that way. So
that
was another impressive throw. Here we have another one. Oh, this is where the bad throws come in. Okay.
Yeah, hey, we got to hit the bad too.
Yeah. I'm going to be honest, it was mostly in a couple games, and it wasn't like, horrible over and over again. There was a couple plays in this game, but I do remember it started pouring down the rain late in this one, and I think one of his bad throws was in the downpour. But this one, I know he's trying to do. It looks like maybe a back shoulder throw, 1-on-1, but the defender is definitely in front of the ball, and he's lucky that that one didn't get picked off. Here's another one. I think I don't know what happened with this play, to be honest. He doesn't do this very often, but I think he just missed the defender because it's this defender right here. He tries to throw it across the middle, and the defender cuts in front of it.
Right.
So
they fooled him on this one.
Yeah.
Looks like.
So,
yeah.
So it was just a bad thing, but he's going to get that in the NFL too, and just with experience.
It's a great drive on that ball by the defender too.
Yes, definitely. I think maybe if he had thrown it a little sooner, but it's probably,
Well, the throwing late across the middle typically doesn't end well for quarterbacks.
Yes. So here's another one. Let me see what happens with this one. Oh, this one is it's very high. I think
overthrown,
Yeah. And he got his wide receiver killed. So that's why I threw this one. Just high, and over the middle, you can't throw it high and late like that.
Right. It almost looked like, his mechanics didn't look terrible on that play either. I think he just put too much zip on it. You wanted to gun that thing in there and, got a little too much juice on it.
Definitely. And I will say another good thing I've seen with him is he can vary, the ball speed. He knows when to throw it in there, with velocity, and knows when to loft it. So I like how he can do that.
Yeah, me too.
Oh, here's one that, it's just a really bad
pressure in his face.
Pressure,
It up. Yeah.
I will say that if you have obviously it's whatever team he goes to, but I noticed teams that blitzed him right up the middle and that cover for a couple seconds, so he doesn't have that quick read, really bothered him. So.
Yeah, I agree. I actually have that as one of my knocks on my scouting report for him is, under pressure, he does get a little bit rattled. You can rattle him and he makes some bad decisions.
This is another one where he just misread the defense. The safety's, waiting, and it's kind of late, but it just shouldn't be thrown. This is the game I told you about that it looked like it was one of his worst games against Virginia. And like I said, they still won by 10. He still threw 4 touchdowns. But that was
right.
So that's what we have.
Yeah. Can you go back to that one real quick?
Sure.
I wanted to see. Is there a view of his eyes? Was he locked on to that guy the whole time? Because that defender read that perfectly.
Yeah. Let me play it again.
It's another thing I'm always looking at with quarterbacks, their eyes.
Yeah, it looks like.
Yeah, he did. He got it locked in. Yeah. Because I think that's actually a strength of Kenny Pickett's is his ability to read defenses and go through progressions. I definitely saw a lot of that, some pro style reads, and you see his eyes moving, going through different reads. So, right there, that certainly wasn't the case, but overall.
Yeah. But like I said, obviously we put some of those in. I did, ones when Malik Willis and Carson Strong too did the same type of thing. And I think Pickett showed more positives. So, why don't you take us through some of what you think his strengths and weaknesses are?
Yeah, I kind of touched on it there already. I think that, his ability to go through progressions is, make the right read with the ball. I think he has pretty solid footwork. His mechanics are generally pretty solid. Again, I think when they get pressure on him, when he gets a little bit sloppy is when he gets himself into trouble. But typically you see him taking a 3-step drop, whatever, taking the hitch, throwing it to, the right read with anticipation. He's an anticipation thrower. And I think that translates well, that particular skill, because wide receivers in the NFL love a guy that can anticipate them being open rather than waiting for them to get open and then throwing the ball. Again, I think his arm strength is there. I don't think it's elite, but I think he can make every throw. You saw that throw to the hash marks, and that throw. So even often I think people make the mistake. They're looking at how far can a quarterback throw the ball to judge arm strength. And I don't think that is an accurate, way to assess it always, right? So those hash mark throws, would he put zip on it, throwing it across the field like that? That's more what I'm looking for in arm strength, because most guys can throw it across the field, right? I mean, some guys certainly have more than others. There's no doubt about that. But those throws, right? He can make all those throws, and he makes the reads. I just think that he has an NFL skill set. I already talked about the mobility a little bit. I think he's faster, right? He ran the 4.73, which is pretty good. I mean, that's pretty good speed for a quarterback.
Definitely. Yeah.
And he's shown the ability. We all saw the fake slide play. That was fun. But again, it's not that he's functionally mobile, right? It's not that he's always looking to run, but he's looking to make the right play. He's always looking downfield for a guy to get open, and I love that. I love seeing quarterbacks that are always looking to make a play, when they're in trouble outside of the pocket. So.
And I think one thing that he has over Corral and Howe, I think they might be better overall runners, but they take a lot of unnecessary hits. And Pickett is smart in sliding and trying to get down. One thing that I didn't realize this, but Jeremiah was talking about, one thing is because they're talking about his hand size. They said the only thing that they saw was he had like 26 fumbles in like 49 games, which can be fixed, but obviously that can be a problem. We've seen what's happened with Daniel Jones in the NFL with fumbling when you get hit.
Sure.
Most of the time when I saw him fumble, he's trying to run for extra yards. And, he'll learn that. And one thing I did notice too, he made a lot of those great off-platform throws, but sometimes kind of like he's a gunslinger. Sometimes I think he thinks he's Superman in that sense. And can run around, and then sometimes he gets blindsided with some hits and takes some unnecessary sats and everything.
Gets a little overconfident at times,
yes,
probably.
Yes, sometimes. But I mean, that's something that can be coached. To be better and everything.
I'd rather have a quarterback that's overconfident than underconfident, right?
Yeah, and like you said, I liked how he would run the offense. It seems like he can do, hurry up. He can slow it down. It seems like he can do the progressions, because you didn't those highlights, you didn't necessarily see all slants or all anything like that. He was reading comebacks,
right.
And all of those. So I think he does a lot of that well. And I will say it's going to be very interesting. I think we kind of talked about the quarterbacks earlier. I think all these quarterbacks fit is going to be the biggest thing. What any of them do. Where I think before, you even saw it last year. Everyone thought Trevor Lawrence was a can't miss prospect, and he didn't look good. Yeah, I know the Jaguars were bad. Trust me, I know, because I live in Jacksonville. But he still, as a number one pick, he made some decisions that were not good. And that just shows coaching does matter, because I know, all the things with Matt Jones, which had a very good year. But, I mean, if you put most of those quarterbacks in that Belichick scheme, they probably would do similar things. I don't know if they would do as well, but they would do similar things. So
absolutely.
I think that just showed how much coaching and just like a good team structure really helps you.
Culture matters for whatever team you go to. And you brought up that Patriots scheme, man. When was the last time they didn't have a good quarterback in play? And I know they've had Tom Brady for the last fucking 50 years or whatever it is, right? But they had a couple other guys come in at certain times. Matt Castle was one of them that came in. Garoppolo played a little bit. They all play well. They're just coached up.
Yeah. I mean,
that's not taken away from Mac Jones. I think he's a fine quarterback, but it's a perfect landing spot.
Definitely. And look at what Belichick did for Matt Castle and Garoppolo. They got huge contracts just from, playing sparingly. It's like everyone wants to duplicate the Belichick success, and you've seen with the assistants, they just haven't been able to do it.
Oh, I remember Josh McDaniels in Denver all too well.
Yes, I'm sure you do. So now let's talk about the combine. I know we're talking in the Devy dashboard on the, I think it was Thursday night, with the wide receivers going crazy with the speed and everything. So I put what we have up here: the top 10 and the 40-yard dash, the vertical, the 3-cone. I'll just start off with some of my thoughts, and then we can kind of go back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
I was very surprised at how fast Chris Olave ran. I think he might bump up a spot for me. Right now in my ranks, he's 4 behind Jameson Williams, just because Jameson Williams' injury and that Olave has done it over more years. They're pretty close anyway. He's not going to be anywhere close to the top, but I need to dive in deeper, because usually I can look on YouTube and look up people's games, but Tyquan Thornton from Baylor, all they have is like his highlights. So I'm actually going to have to rewatch Baylor games to like watch deeper. But I do like him, and he has its speed, and I do wonder if, some of the Baylor wide receivers that have not done well, if that's going to affect how he's thought of. But, and another player, Bo Melton, he did very well in a lot of these. He'll probably not be, a starter early on, probably some special teams, but maybe get in there. But I always thought he looked good when I watched Rutgers. Rutgers' passing offense has been horrible since he's been there.
It was hideous.
Yeah, but it was nice to see him perform pretty well. And so what were some of your thoughts on some of these guys?
Yeah, I like Bo Melton. Actually, he was one of the guys that stood out to me. To be honest, I didn't know a whole lot about him. You know what I mean? So I went back and watched a little Rutgers film, and it's just it's hard to watch because that offense is so bad. But yeah, he was making plays, so I was impressed. One of the guys that stood out to me that I'm probably higher on than consensus is Alec Pierce. I knew he was pretty fast, but that 4.41 is impressive. He killed it in the vertical, number 1 in the vertical, and you see that on film when you watch him. When I was watching, going back when I was studying Desmond Ridder, I was constantly like, damn, who's this guy making plays, making these acrobatic high point catches. It's Alec Pierce, so he's interesting to me. If he gets day 2 or early day 3 capital, I'm definitely in on him. I will say that Christian Watson and Sky Moore both put up really impressive performances, and you can't take that away from them, but I'm a little bit skeptical about them especially from a fantasy perspective, right? A dynasty or Devy perspective. I'm a little bit skeptical that they're going to be taken earlier than they should be, and they may struggle in year 1. It might be a bigger, more difficult transition for them to the NFL level, because what I've seen on film is their route trees are just not very expanded at this point.
Yeah, so I think Sky Moore is a weird one for me, because when I watched the tape, he got open and everything, but he didn't look fast to me on tape. But I mean, he ran a 4.41, but I was like, it's a lot of like him making acrobatic catches. I do worry with Christian Watson, because you saw in some of the drills and some from the tape, he has some issues with drops. I mean, he might be able to get past that, but I mean, his competition level is going to take a while for him to probably get used to that in the NFL, especially at the wide receiver position, because he's not going to be used to those more physical, those faster corners, safeties that might be just as fast as corners, he went up against in college. So I do agree with that. Obviously, Garrett Wilson's still number 1 for me. He didn't do anything that would take that away from him. He actually ran faster than I thought he would too. I was a little disappointed in Dotson's performance. I'm big on Jahan Dotson, and he even said, they had an interview with him, and he said that in the 40 at the pro day, he'll do better. I expect a little bit better than him, especially in the 3-cone. And a player that last year I loved, that I just don't think he's going to make it, or to what he did in college, is David Bell. I was big on him last year because it just seemed he was so technically sound, and even though he couldn't get the separation, but just watching him, he did not look like the same type of athlete as most of those receivers on the field.
Yeah, absolutely. Just from the overall combine, I think David Bell and Kyron Williams were the most disappointing, certainly. I thought David Bell I didn't think he was fast. I thought he was faster than that, and that was certainly disappointing. I know Wandale, I think a lot of us were expecting a little bit better from Wandale, maybe a little bit faster because he's not a big guy. We kind of knew he was going to come in short. 5'8". I was hoping he wouldn't be 5'6". That would have really been a problem, but 5'8" I can live with if if he lands in the right spot, if he's used in the right way. And I just can't, I can't quit on Wandale, man. His film, I just love his film.
No, I mean, I get it because his tape is electric, just how they used him and everything, and he catches everything, and he's definitely way tougher than you would think he'd be. He had a couple drops, but I'm trying to think who else really impressed me.
What about Burks? How did you feel about Burks? I know people thought he was going to run a little bit faster. I kind of thought he'd run in that 4.5 range.
I think I don't think he did anything bad, but I think the expectations of everyone was he was going to kill the combine, and that was going to help him bridge the gap between Garrett Wilson's tape, and he just wasn't able to do that. I still think Burks is good. He's still my wide receiver too.
Yeah,
but I understand the side that thinks he has all the potential. I think he has the highest ceiling if he can put it all together. But I do understand the other side too, because I mean, he could be one of those guys that it's going to be hard to get everything out of him just because he doesn't have that great route running ability. And it's going to take him. He's going to need to be a guy that gets to the right team because he's not your traditional receiver. You can just put him out wide and tell him to run a route. You're going to have to, put him in different positions. And I actually thought, depending on what Tampa Bay does, if Godwin leaves, I thought he might be a good player there because Arians likes to use the big wide receivers on screens and just move them around in the slot.
Yeah.
So I think something like that, because you're going to have to get him off of probably press coverage because he's fast and he's physical, but he doesn't have that technique. So he still needs some of that.
Yeah. And I think Godwin, there was talk today that they were using the franchise tag on him. So that one might be off the table there, but yeah, get him in a system with a creative play caller. Look what Shanahan does with Debo. And I'm not saying Treylon is Debo, but they do have a similar stature and sort of a lot of the same traits as far as versatility goes. He's still my wide receiver one, but it's like a 1A, 1B with him and Garrett Wilson. I love both guys for different reasons. Garrett Wilson's just smooth in everything he does, athletic. He's just kind of that, not the biggest guy, but the whole package just from a wide receiver perspective that you could see translating into the NFL smoothly. But Treylon I'm a sucker for that profile, man. I see things on his film that really get me excited.
I mean, I everything you're saying, I agree with. And I'm trying to think who else. I really think this wide receiver class is very deep. So I think there's some guys, usually you want the day 1 or day 2 draft capital. I think there's going to be a lot of guys that get drafted day 3 that are still going to be, pretty good fantasy wise, maybe as a wide receiver 3 or something, or maybe down the line, making that move. I thought the Ole Miss receivers, they look pretty good, through a lot of the routes. I know people weren't really high on him, but I was impressed during the season at Miami how Charleston Rambo looked, but I thought he did not look very good in any of the drills. He was having trouble catching the ball, and especially since he was like was he a 4th or 5th year player? I'm not totally sure, but he just his stock went way down for me. There was a couple players that looked like they struggled to catch the ball. So yeah, for sure. It definitely saw some drops that were kind of head scratchers with some of these guys. And
I think this combine was weird, man. I know they haven't been doing this very long, but where they time it out, where it's an all-day event and they're doing these drills, at whatever it was, 8 p.m., 9 p.m. by the time they get into a lot of these drills. And shit, these guys are probably tired, man.
That's what I have to guess why some of these guys that should be faster in the 3-cone, like Dotson, I mean, I would never think David Bell could beat him, in that quickness drill. I would think this is the last year they're going to do it this way. I don't know why they do it. Well, I know why they do it for the TV and everything. But if how all the running backs, opted out. I mean, I think the players in the union are probably going to push to have that changed because, I mean, why would you run all these things if it's going to make you look worse?
Yeah, absolutely. It was kind of funky, they had a new guy doing running the timer. I heard as well. So it's like some of those times the unofficial compared to the official was like like even Olave, right? A 4.39 is great, right? But when you show us 4.26, we're then it's a bit of a letdown when we go to 4.39.
Yeah, definitely. I know we're just talking about wide receivers, but we can briefly talk about the running backs. I didn't get to watch all that, but I did see some of the 40 tons. That Breece Hall run, I didn't know he was that fast.
Oh yeah. That man, Breece Hall killed it. He solidified that RB1 spot. I think in most people's minds, NFL and fantasy alike, but. Yeah, I thought he was maybe a high, like 4.9, 4.49, 4.48, somewhere in that range. What did he end up running? It was like 4.39, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was something like that.
Yeah.
And there, like you brought up Kyron, he shouldn't have run. I mean, he shouldn't have run. And there's a couple other.
Yeah. He got bad advice from somebody.
Yeah. And Ely, I mean, he didn't have a bad time. It was like 4.5 something. But I was like, as a small running back, you got to run faster. I mean, there's a couple other somewhat scat backs that did not run as fast, and there were a couple. Ty Chandler ran really fast. I want to say he ran like 4.37 or something. Which I didn't know he did fast.
I had no idea he was that fast. I did not see that on film with him. Impressive though. I think Goodson kind of stood out to me. Mm-hmm. I think he had like a 4.44, 4.45, somewhere in that range. He showed some nice quickness and lateral agility, I thought, on some of those drills. And Jerome Ford, I was impressed with Jerome Ford. I was, selfishly hoping he would run a little bit faster, but 4.46 I'm plenty good with that. That's plenty enough speed. I just think he's a fun guy. No, when he gets into the open field, he's fast. He's explosive.
He is. While I have you on here before we end, I wanted to get your opinion on this. I think Jerome Ford is he's way faster than I originally thought, especially when he gets past that first line of defense, and he's good at breaking tackles. I don't think consistently he's elusive enough in the hole. Like there's sometimes in the red zone where he'll do like an amazing jump cut, to kind of get out of there. But a lot of the other times it's either blocked really well or he breaks, one or two tackles. I think I personally, that compared to everyone except Breece, I think Breece is amazing in the hole with all of his different moves. But I think all the other running backs don't necessarily have, the full array of moves when they're, in the hole against defenders.
Yeah, sure. And that's a fair assessment. I think Jerome, you kind of alluded to it. He has some moves in his arsenal, and you could see him, make some really nice cuts, some really nice juke moves in the open field. But yeah, at times it's just sort of, I don't know. I wouldn't even know what word I would use for it. He's just not really using those skills in the open field, And again, you do see it with a lot of these guys. I don't think there were some pretty explosive 40 times, but I don't think it's a highly explosive running back class. I think there's a lot of good backs, though, just like the wide receivers. I think the depth is there. I don't. It'll be interesting to see who the third running back or who the top three are really. Like Kenneth Walker, again, we didn't even talk about Kenneth Walker. I've been on him for a while, and he blew it up. I think Kenneth Walker is a fantastic prospect.
Yeah, I didn't know he would be that fast either. I thought he'd be faster than Brees, but I didn't know they both would run that well. It'll be interesting if Isaiah Spiller can, during his pro day, kind of fits this, somewhat free fall that he's kind of having, because forever it was always like 1, 2, and I guess Kenneth Walker's 3, but now, I mean, he might fall to 3, and who knows if someone else jumps up, with workouts or in everything.
It's going to be interesting. I'm not off of Spiller. You know what I mean? Like when I go back to film, I like a lot of what I've seen from him. I think he's a good running back prospect. I think, he played against some elite defenses. He put up some numbers. He can catch the ball really nicely, out of the backfield and run some routes and all that good stuff. But yeah, unimpressive. They're kind of in damage control right now.
Yeah.
Him and his agent,
Yeah, because they put something out about there's some injury he was working through.
Like a strained rotator muscle or something.
Which is kind of like whenever someone performs poorly in something like this, they always throw out like some sort of injury, and then
Yeah, where's Kyron's agent, man? where the hell is he at? Come on, you should be talking about him running out there with a torn ACL or some shit.
Definitely, I do wonder too. I guess it's still a big deal to go to the combine, but is there ever a time where a lot of players are just going to pass up the combine and just do it at their pro day because you have much more control over that kind of atmosphere and everything? It'll be interesting. I guess you still get to meet with if you're a good enough prospect, I would think that the coaches are still going to come to your pro day and talk to you. So that's kind of interesting how everything's kind of changing now.
Yeah, for sure. It's I could see in the future, I could see more guys opting out and just focusing on the pro day. Again, just to kind of end on Kyron here, I was so disappointed, man. I love Kyron as a prospect. I really thought he was going to run better than that and look better than that. On film, he does not look like a 4.7 guy, 4.65 or whatever he ran, man. It's disappointing. I feel for the kid. I hope he can bounce back and up his stock a little bit at his pro day.
I think he's one of those guys. There's certain players that I think if they just have to get an opportunity, and once they get on the practice field or, in some preseason games, I think he could move up. But definitely where people were putting him, they were saying possibly, he could move up in the, top 3 running backs type that. That's probably not going to happen now. But it'll be interesting because I think a lot of these running backs aren't main starter running backs, but they're part of a team. And we've seen in fantasy with more teams going to 2-back sets, 2-back rotations, that all of them are going to become, valuable at some sense. And so I just want to close with this. I meant to ask this question earlier, but with the combine, how much does what happened in the combine when it's happening, alter your opinion on these players, especially how you rank them?
Honestly, not very much. It's a piece of the puzzle, but I don't like to make any drastic moves, and overreact. You know what I mean? We live in a world right now where everybody craves instant gratification. And what have you done for me lately? So the combine sort of provides that for a lot of people. We get really hyped up about certain guys just based on, a 40 time or whatever. But so, long story short, it matters. And it's part of the evaluation process, but it's just a piece of the puzzle. I'm not one of those people that overreacts to big or bad combine performances. Even Kyron, right? Like I moved him down because I had to after that, but it didn't move him down drastically. I still believe in him as a prospect.
Yeah, definitely. For me, it's like maybe a 1-player move, based on the combine. Like I said, between Olave and Williams. And part of that too is, Williams' injury. I know he's going to come back from it, but still, he has to deal with that. And, obviously at Ohio State, Olave beat Jameson Williams out where he had to go somewhere else. So something like that, and might move Sky Moore up a spot. And then some of the sleepers, like it's a confirmation bias, I guess, a little bit, like Tyquan Thornton, the Bo Belton, like we've mentioned, just with them, performing well, that makes me feel a little bit better about them in sleeper status, at least.
Sure, absolutely. And it gives them recognition. These are guys, some of these guys that we really haven't heard of. Well, a lot of people haven't heard of them, right? And even us guys that are plugged in and doing a lot of scouting, it's like, oh, shit, Velus Jones, gonna have to go look at him a little bit more, right? Calvin Austin's a guy, Danny Gray. These are all. It sort of forces us to take a little bit of a deeper look. So that's one of the benefits. Yeah,
definitely. So I want to thank you for coming on and talking about your boy, Kenny Pickett. I have the hardest time with? I don't know if you remember, but there was a quarterback named Cody Pickett. I think he was from Washington. And every time I talk about Kenny Pickett, I have to think about which Pickett I need to say, because I think I've been on a call before and I've called him Cody Pickett. So but yeah, it's fun talking the combine, and good luck, with everything you're doing, and thanks for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I appreciate you having me anytime.